I would like Josh to start sharing his screen. So Josh, please introduce yourself. Tell us about how you got here in your own words, and we might supplement information. But for the most part, as they say, tell it as it is, and we'll take it from there. And I promise to go on silent.
Sounds good. So I'm going to share my screen. I'm just going to go through the title first, and then I have an About Me page. The way I got to this user group was John Levesque reached out to a bunch of people that he knows on Twitter. And then Craig reached out saying that he could give me a spot for a user group speaking. So today, what I will be talking about is Power Automate for and error handling, and it's kind of for beginners. I guarantee you're going to learn something because not many people implement error handling. I know I didn't when I first started, but we'll get into that. So a little bit about me. My name is Josh Cook. I am a Microsoft MVP in business applications. I mainly work in Azure throughout my workday. I am an integration developer, so I'm using Logic Apps, which is kind of like the big brother of Flow. I say big brother, but it doesn't mean it's better. There's a lot of things that Flow or Power Automate can do, and there's a lot of things that Logic Apps can do that they can't do. They can't do all the same things together. A good example would be approvals. So that's my little QR code there. If you scan it, it'll take you to my Twitter. I have my links there for Twitter and my blog, and you can also connect with me on LinkedIn if you like. I will have these links in the QR code at the very end as well. So if you miss it here, that's totally fine. Also with questions, if you have questions, I don't know how you guys want to do it. If you guys want to talk in the chat, and then I'm not going to be able to monitor the chat until after. But if somebody wants to let me know there's a question, or if you guys think we can do it at the end, that's fine too. Open to all. Yeah. So today's agenda is going to be basically what is error handling. Pretty simple. Why you should use it, and we are going to be using a structure called try catch finally. I come from a coding background, so I kind of already knew about try catch finally. I didn't know you could or even wanted to implement it in Power Automate, but found out very quickly that it's probably a great idea to implement that. And then we're going to be going through how to throw errors and the structure that I've been using for error handling in my flows. And then we're going to be going through some demos. One main demo is going to be a real use case that I actually came up with while I was working, and we'll talk about that in a second. And then we'll go at the very end as a Q&A. So what is error handling? So basically, error handling is acknowledging the error that happens in a run or a flow, and in this case, a flow. So we're acknowledging an error that could happen. You don't want to think that your flow will never fail. Even if you don't know what the error might be, you still want to create that structure to catch that error. You want to build logic to deal with errors, if possible, if you want to as well. Because if you don't, you're never going to know it fails. And if it does fail, you might want to send email alerts, or you might want to handle the error, and maybe you're able to fix the error too in the same run, or push it to another system to get fixed. You might want to gracefully finish the run. So that means that even if the flow has failed, you might not want it to show as a failed run. Maybe you still want it to show as successful, or maybe canceled, or a different status. Now, all this sounds really great, but how can we implement error handling in Flow? Again, we're going to be using try catch finally. So to explain that, I will use some nice rectangles. So what is try catch finally? So first, try. So we're going to be using a scope, and it's going to be try. So the initial steps that you want to what is try? The initial steps that you want to try and run in the flow. And then, so that can be if I want to send an email to somebody, that's going to be my try. And then catching we're going to catch any errors that might happen in try. And then finally, this kind of sounds exactly how it sounds. These are going to be run no matter what the outcome is. If it fails, if it's successful, we're always going to execute this block. Now, finally is not really like required. It could be optional. Again, you might just want to try something and then catch any errors. You might not want to do anything after, and that's okay. So what I always call it is like try catch and then finally after, maybe. It really depends on the business scenario. So to give a better example of how this works, I'm going to give some good analogies here. So try, it could be used as like, I'm in my car and I'm going to go drive to my destination. I'm going to pretend that I'm going to go on a holiday because I can't go on holidays right now. So in this example, I'm going to drive to a holiday. Now, I'm driving and I guess I'm driving too fast maybe. So a police car pulls me over. He's catching me. And then no matter what happens after that, unless something crazy happens where I'm like a DUI or something, but that's not going to happen. I'll probably just get a speeding ticket. So after that speeding ticket, I drive my car and I arrive at my destination, and that would be the finally. Another good example is me going to sleep and waking up in the morning. Now I set my alarm at night and hopefully my alarm goes off. Missed my alarm. That's the error or the catch that's the error that I am catching. And then no matter what happens, even if I'm late, even if I'm early, I'm going to arrive at work. So that's kind of how the structure works there. So why should we use it? So this is a very a common question that even my organization, not everybody uses error handling. I like to implement it only because it saves me time and it saves me hassle later on. So basically, I have a little tiny story. So I remember like one of my first flows, again, I come from a coding background, so I'm not really used to this no code, but I absolutely love it now. Makes my life a lot easier, and Microsoft has shown a lot of initiative in keeping this platform open and so broad now. So one of my flows that I created when I first started using the platform, one of my first flows came from actually a Power App that was deployed. Now this Power App was it was a pretty big Power App. Like my organization was still kind of new to Power Apps, so we didn't really deploy that many. So this was a pretty big project. It required a lot of people to be added to this to the environment. We had 3 environments: dev, test, and prod. And basically, we had no users in the prod environment, so we had to add all those users. We had to assign them licenses, and also give them access to the app itself. Now, I'm pretty sure nowadays it's a lot easier to assign licenses and add them to the environment. At the time, it wasn't very. It was very painful. It was very manual, and you had to do it like one by one for each person to add them in the environment. It's a different story though. But so anyway, so the process that I mainly wanted to automate was giving the user a P1 license. At the time, it was called a P1 license. And the reason why is because the app used CDS or Dataverse now. So, and I also wanted to add the user to the prod environment, but that's again a different story. But so that doesn't sound too bad. But I was getting, like, after this app was deployed, I was getting about, I would say about 3 or 4 emails a day, and the people that were emailing me, and this is after the project's done, and people were emailing me saying, oh, yeah, I really want these 5, 10 users added in there, and I'm like, okay, stop what I'm doing, add them in. And I would get like maybe 4 or 5 emails like this a day. So I would spend about a good hour, maybe 2 hours in the middle of my day, right? My manager did not like that. He really wanted me to figure out a process to automate that as much as possible, just because I wasn't really wasting my time, but it did come to a realization that I was taking a lot of my time. So that being said, when building the flow, I did not really think about the error handling. It was still new to me again, and still new to me, and I come from a developer background, like I said. So try catch finally was known previously, but I didn't really think about adding it in here because of the low code, no code platform. So I assumed that error handling is not even needed. And here's a great example. I don't know if you guys, anyone in here has actually seen this, but this email right here. So this email, I love this email because, you know, it tells you that your flow has failed. If you work with flows a lot, you've probably seen this email. It's great, but it's not great because it comes probably like, it can come like minutes, days. I even seen it a week late. So my my flow has failed on Monday and I didn't even know. And then all of a sudden I get this email on like Thursday, Friday. I'm like, oh, my flow's failed. Well, better go see why. Or even sometimes the business was even letting me know that something has failed before I even got this email. So that's definitely not a good thing. So going off that, so there's two things I don't like about this email as well. Actually, is that like I said, it comes very late. Also, it only gets sent to the flow owner. So if I wanted to send this to or if I wanted to let like a business user know that something went wrong, this wouldn't really help me at all. Even if I forwarded it to them, again, it's not very user friendly in that way. So again, why should we use it? Because all flows do fail, no matter what. And here's a good nice meme there. So you know how to throw exceptions, which is errors. You just need to know how to handle them, which is basically fixing the error. So really trying to get you guys to understand why we should use this. So we can send alerts to better support failures. You might not even be the person supporting the flow. Like at my organization, we have a separate team for support, and you might not even want to see those emails. You might want to send those emails and those alerts to another team. In this case, this would be perfect. It also saves money. Like I said, this is the original use case that I was talking about before, with the users being added to or getting a license and everything like that. Excuse me. It saves money because I don't have to deal with it as much, especially when failures happen. I don't have to be involved. I can send the errors to the actual business users and they can deal with it if it's an error that they can fix. If it's not, then I'll have to fix it, or somebody technical or somebody that has access to the flow will be able to fix it. Happy stakeholders. So happy stakeholders, in my opinion, is great because if they're happy, they won't come to you and make your day not very happy. Also, implementing error handling can also it gives you understanding of why things are failing instead of just having it fail and it'll give like a broader like description to the broader team of why something's failing, and then maybe like later when you're building another flow or another process, you're thinking about these types of errors. So onto the flow structure. So how do we implement this in flow? So we're going to use scopes. Scopes is an action where you can group other actions together. You cannot group variables. I really wish you could. I brought that up in an ideas form many times. I really want that. That'd be awesome. But yeah, so we're going to use try catch finally with the scopes. And we're going to use this feature in Power Automate called configure run after. And what that's essentially going to do is that's going to allow us, in this picture here on the left, you see the red arrow. And what that is symbolizing with that little, like the I information button there. But what that is symbolizing is that we have a configure run after there. So if you see the picture on the right, we're basically saying that the catch block is only going to run if it has failed, if the try catch or the try scope has failed, is skipped, or has timed out. And everything, if it's successful, it won't run. But the finally down here is going to run basically any time. So it's going to run even if it's successful, failed, skipped, or timed out. So on to the demos. Before I go to the demos, are there any questions?
Yeah. No, I'm excited to see how this works, actually, because I've got a need for it, and I never really thought about doing it, structuring it as I guess I'm too far out of programming. Used to do them all the time, but never really thought about applying it to a flow. So cool.
Yeah. Sweet. So, so I'll get out of that screen there. So I did make a solution here. So I'm going to do this.
Josh, do we get copies of your slides?
if you want a copy of my slides, I can definitely provide it after. That's not an issue.
Okay, thanks. Save me from trying to take notes really fast.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, so first I kind of want to show, there's two things here. So I really want to show the differences. I don't know if you guys know about this, but basically I just want to talk about errors. So there is a couple of things here. So if I don't know if you guys know about the terminate action. Terminate is great. You can choose if you want it to fail, if you want it to cancel or succeed. And this will show when you're running the flow. So in the flow run history, if you put failed, it's going to show as failed. If you put it successful, it'll terminate as successful. Now, this is great, but there's a little bit of limitations on it. First of all, it cannot be used in loops. So no apply to each loops. Cannot use this in there. Will not let you. Also, if I have something underneath here, let's say if I have, so I'll actually add a try-catch structure right here. So I'll just copy that to the clipboard, paste that. I'll do it again. Now I have 3. So 1 will be try, and 1 will be catch. And finally. So if I put this terminate in my try, let's put it up there and put it in there. Now, this is how you do the configure run after. So the reason why configure run after is also so important in scopes. So you just click the 3 dots and you go over to configure run after. So configure run after is good, but if I implement this on an action instead of a scope, and then I move that action somewhere else in my flow, it breaks the configure run after. It totally resets it. Now, when it's in a scope, it's easy to understand if it's broken or not because it's just one line and it's basically a group of actions. It's just cleaner, and it's probably personal preference, but whatever makes things easier to support later, and if it looks cleaner, it's easier to read, I'm all for it. So again, so I want to show what terminate does. So a scope-try, this is going to run if it has failed or skipped or timed out. So now if I run this, I'm expecting, since this is failing, that the catch will run. So it doesn't matter what the name. I'm going to save it. Cloud's being slow. There we go. So now I'm going to just trigger the flow here by doing the test. Run the flow. So flow run has failed, expected. But something weird happened, right? So terminate ran successfully, but my catch did not run. It said it was skipped, and finally has been skipped. I didn't set up configure run after for finally, but it doesn't even matter because scope doesn't scoped it, or the catch didn't run. So the reason for that is terminates the whole process right away. It doesn't think about anything. It's just like, I'm done. So if I wanted to do some, if I wanted to try something and catch it, terminate's not the way to do it. If there was a real error, like send an email action failed, it would have went into catch. But if I wanted to use something to force an error on purpose, terminate in this particular case would not work. So I'm going to show what you guys can do to basically force an error and still have it process. So what I've been doing is I get rid of this terminate, and I'll set up the configure run after on the finally. So again, finally, I'm going to have it run no matter what. So all the options there. So now if at the top of my flow, I'm going to use a variable to force my error. And the way I'm going to do that is so variable, I'm just going to do a initialize variable. I'll just name it, I'll name it force error. Force error, so I'll just name it error. Doesn't really, Doesn't really matter. So I'm gonna put it as a integer. Now, in my try, if I wanted to, so if I wanted to force an error here, if something happens above and I'm like, okay, that means I want there to be an error and I want it to go to catch. Maybe it's something to do with the email. I want to grab that and I don't want to continue on with the try. I want to be able to catch what's going on. So what I would do is I would select error, and in here I'm going to use an expression. Don't worry, it's not a crazy expression. I'm just going to put true. So now it's a Boolean value. So now when I run this, it will throw an error because it's a integer and I'm passing in a Boolean value, and it's not going to like that. So as you can see now it works properly. So well, the way that I want it to. So I'm setting the variable again. It's just saying that it can't be initialized to because it's an integer. That's fine. That's what I wanted. And then I would be able to run my catch and then my finally. So that is just a really bonus tip that I wanted to throw in there. I'm actually not going to be using this variable and this type of technique for my my use case demo, but I just wanted to throw that in there because I do see a lot of people not knowing how to force an error without using terminate. So, is there any questions about this structure here?
Nope, pretty good.
Sounds good. Okay, so onto the I'm going to basically fix the issue I was talking about in my slides, where I really want to. So I'll show it here. This is my own tenant, so I don't really have this set up fully how the real use case would have been. But I basically have a Azure group here. It's called this one. So technically what you could do is you can have the licenses set up in here. So whoever's added in this group would get a license. And I could also set this up to have this group add them into the environment as well in the dev environment. So what I want to do is I wanted to give in this example the stakeholders basically not permission, but basically I give them the tools to be able to add anybody they wanted into their into the environment and give them licenses for their app that we all built. So what I did is that I created a form here. So this form, basically I'm going to give it to the stakeholders, and they can type in all their email addresses that they want, just separated by a semicolon, and then they can hit submit. And then this would, well, what I wanted to do is I wanted to trigger it to basically grab all those emails and then give them licenses with the Office 365 group. So, so yeah, I have the form built, pretty simple, just a text input with just a regular text input. I am telling them to do it with semicolon. Hopefully they listen to that because it will break if they don't. But it's pretty simple. So now if I go back to Flow, it won't be that hard to implement. I'll just use this here as my template. I don't need this. And everything else can be fine. So I will get rid of my trigger. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, again, I have that Microsoft form. So I'm going to want to trigger it off a Microsoft form. So when a new response is submitted, and then I'm going to pick my form. I only have two. It's that one. And with forms, you always need the second part, which is the get user response details, or not user, but get response details. Then I pass in the form again, unique identifier of the form. So now that's set up. So now I should be able to get the information from my form. So for this, I basically want to have a variable for all the emails right here. I want to be able to grab these emails. So if I go here, I'm going to that, initialize the variable, I will call this valid emails. I'll just put valid emails. I'm going to make this an array. The reason why I'm doing an array is because I want to basically grab each individual email after. So to do that, so now I'm going to want, so I'm going to have one for valid emails, and we'll see how much time I have after. I might want to add another variable here for failed or maybe invalid emails, but I'll get that in a second. So now I'm going to go in my try. So this is what I want to try. So first, I'm going to use an expression here, but I hope no one's scared of expressions. It's going to be a simple one, I promise. So if I'm going to use a compose, and the reason why I really like compose, because compose, you can put anything into it, and it spits out anything. It doesn't have to be a certain data type or anything like that. So I really like compose. So compose, and I'm going to name this. This is actually how I'm going to split the emails so I could get each individual email. So I'm just going to call it split emails. Now in the inputs here, again, I'm going to use an expression, but don't be scared. It's just really simple. So I'm just going to use a split expression. And what split does is it just splits the string using a separator. So again, if I go back to my form, I want to separate it by a semicolon. So if I go here, split. So what do I want to split? So if I go to dynamic content, so email addresses of users, that's exactly what I want to split. So I click that. Now I put a comma because after you put the first parameter, or each parameter is separated by a comma within the expression. So comma. And I know it looks really ugly right there, but that's just the ID of that field. Don't worry about that. It's asking me now for the separator. So everything in a Power Automate flow needs single quotes. So I'm going to put single quotes and then the semicolon. Now, there's no more parameters. So that's kind of exactly how I want it. I'm going to copy this. The reason why I do this is because I hit OK. Sometimes it looks really, it doesn't work properly for me. So I always like to copy it, and I actually put it into the comments just so I have a reference of what's going on. So now I'm going to be able to get every single email out of there. So now I'm going to want to add that each individual email into the Office 365 group. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on Control, and I'm going to use an apply to each loop. So the apply to each loop, I really want to apply to each email address. So I'm going to put in the outputs of the split emails expression that I used. So this should return every single email that's coming in. Even if it's just one, it's going to put it in here and it'll be one. So maybe I should rename this apply to each email. So I'm going to save it just in case something breaks later on. So just to give my peace of mind so I know later, I'm going to use another compose. And this I'm just going to, the reason I'm doing this is because I want to be able to see the email just so I can see. So I'm going to actually put current item in here. The current item will be the email address, the single email address. Now, what do I want to do with that email address? So I know that there is an Office 365, the groups one. I'm going to add them to that group. So I know I'm doing this backwards. That's okay. So I can show with that anyway. So add member to group. I don't need to rename that. It's fine. So again, I want to add them to that Power Platform Dev. And it's asking for the user principal name of that user. That's fine. I should be able to pass in the email that they're giving me from the form. But so here's the thing though, I really want to make sure I'm not just adding any random old email. It'll most likely fail. So I'm kind of thinking about how I can not have this fail. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use the Office 365 users action. Now I'm going to use this to actually get the user profile of the user from the email. So in this case, I'm going to use the current item again, same as the compose. I could use the compose, but I'm just using the compose so I know what's being passed in. So again, this compose is kind of redundant, but it's for my peace of mind if something happens to go wrong. So now I'm getting that, I'm passing in the so-called user principal that I think is the user principal, and then I'm going to actually pass the actual value, user principal from here into there. Now, why am I doing this? Well, I can show why. So I'm going to save this and I'm going to show why I would probably do that. So if I go to my form here and I preview the form, I'm going to type in, first I will type in a very not, this is not a real person in my organization. I'm going to submit that and see what happens. So go back, did save it, but I'm going to save again. That message always scares me. So back. 14 seconds ago, it succeeded. Oh, it succeeded even though it failed. So again, I'm grabbing, there's that email. So I pass, apply to each, and there's my email. I'm going to get that user profile. It's not a real profile, obviously not found. So this action got skipped. Couldn't even add them into the group. Now, if I gave this form to the business user and they ran this, they would have no idea if the user that they're asking for is in the group or not. Now, that was probably not a great idea to do it like that, but if I mistyped the email, like if it was my actual email and I mistyped something, like if I put like flow and then E at the end of that, then obviously that would not work. It would do the same thing, but in the user's mind, he submitted the form, everything's fine, I should have access, so that person should have access. In this case, that wouldn't happen. So what I'm going to do is, if I go back here, I want to basically implement something where I'm going to check. So I'm actually going to have another variable here. Variable. Now I'm going to basically do the same thing as I did above it, but I'm going to do invalid emails. So variable name, so I'm just going to check. It's valid emails. So I'll copy it and paste it. Go invalid emails. Same type of thing. I want an array. And the reason I want that is it's going to come up right here. So now in the apply to each here, I'm going to, so I'm adding the member to the group. Now I don't want to do that if, like I said, this will, if a person does not exist, this action is going to fail. So I'm actually going to modify my little catch here. So, and this is okay to do. Again, every business case is going to be different, and as long as you're catching your errors and dealing with them, awesome. So I'm actually going to drag this catch inside here. Now again, I actually brought this up before. It literally broke my configure run after. So if I click on here, that's okay though. I'll reset it up. I'll set it up after I deal with it here. But so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to, I want to actually do a parallel branch. And the reason why I want to do that is because now I can go here and I can say, hey, so if that action fails, or skipped, actually no, yeah, or skipped and is timed out, I want catch to run. And then over here, I want to, first I want to, I'll actually, this is where I actually want to add the member to the group. Wait a second, no I don't. Oh, this one that failed, yes. So that's actually my bad. So what I want to do is that, because this action failed, the get user profile action has failed when I tried to type in a fake email. So this is how I want to do it. So now I want to catch anything that if get user profile has failed, that's what I want to run this. So now, but if it hasn't failed, this is where I would configure run after over here. Only going to run if it's successful. That's fine. It's perfect. So now I don't need that. So now I have a little block there. So now if it's failed, it goes over here. If it hasn't, it goes over here. Now I want to give basically like visibility to what failed and what hasn't to the actual user who's submitting the form. So in this case, this is where my variables come in up here. So if it has failed, I want to append the failed email to the array. So if I go append, there's an action, append to array variable. So I'm using an array variable. You can do string if you were doing a string. So invalid emails, I'm going to append the user principal, not from the get user profile because that could fail. What I actually want to do is I want to append the current item, because that's going to be the email, single email. So if I type in current email or current item, that's going to append the fake email or the bad email and valid email. And over here, I'm going to do kind of the same thing, except literally the opposite, where I am appending to an array variable, and I'll change the names after, to the valid email. And this is going to be current item again. So now that I have that, so is there any questions of what I'm doing right here? Is anyone confused or, okay. So yeah, so I have my two array variables here. So now, again, if this action's failed, it's going to get pushed to this invalid email. And if this action is successful, meaning the user does exist, that email does exist in my organization, it's going to go to the, first it's going to add the member to that group, which gives them that license, which allows them to go in that security group, which will give them access to the environment and all that crazy stuff. Even if it's a SharePoint site, if they need access to a SharePoint site for the data, SharePoint is tied to an Office 365 group, so that'll also give them access there. So now, and then it also append it to the variable. Now the reason why I want to do that is because, so in the finally, so this is where finally would work for my use case. So again, I'm going to confirm. Right now it's not set up properly, so there we go. So now basically I want to finally I want to run no matter what. I want to run it when it's successful, failed, skipped, or timed out. So in this case, what I want to do is, so I'm going to use an email action here. Yeah, I'll use email. So, okay, so actually what I'm going to do, so I only know this from previous experience, but if I try, what I'm going to do, I'll tell you guys first, is I'm going to actually send an email to the user who submits the form of all the users that are added to the group and all the users that couldn't be added to the group for because of the permissions or not permissions, but because of the user not existing in my organization. But what to do that, I'm going to have to I don't want to pass in a blank variable. So if, let's say, if the invalid emails, actually, let's pass it in. Let's see if it fails. So I don't even need, let's just see. It'll make things a lot simpler and less confusing, actually. So let's try this out. Outlook, Office 365. So I'm going to send an email to myself. Obviously, this would not actually be how to do it, but for the sake of a demo, that's me. Subject, users. Okay, so the following users have been added to the group. Now I'm going to pass in append That is strange. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm actually going to, I will actually have to put that that in. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm actually going to, I'll have to do something above it. So I'm going to use a compose. What this compose is going to do, it's going to compose valid emails. I'll drag this one underneath. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put the valid emails array in there. And I will put the invalid emails in this one. Okay. So now we're going to find out if I can actually pass in a blank variable, because yeah. So the following users have been added. So that's going to be this compose here, compose valid emails. That's that array. And then, see, this is where if I really wanted to make this email look very nice, and I'll show it after, the following, I'll just copy this. The following users have not added to the group. Please verify the emails. And I'll put the invalid emails compose action right there. So now I'm going to save that, and then we're going to test this. And everyone cross your fingers, okay? So once I get saved, I'm just going to back out there. I'll go back to the form. Now I do have a list of users that do exist in my organization. So I will add a few in here. Let's do this. This, and I'll separate it by that semicolon. And I'll leave my email in there that is not my real email. It has an E in there. So I'll also leave that in there and see what happens. So now I have my first email there, separated by semicolon, second email. So those emails do exist in my org, my organization, and then this one doesn't because I have that extra E right there. So I'm going to submit this. Now in the flow, I do realize I set it up as to send myself an email. You could easily set it up to send an email to the flow, to whoever is submitting the form. That's probably what I should have done, but overlooked. So if I refresh this, looks like everything went well 21 seconds ago. So as we can see, something has failed. That's expected. So in here, everything looks good. It added that member to the group, which is Adele. And then the next one, it added, this one's bad actually. So this one, bad request. So let's see why. So they already exist in the group. Okay, so that's a different error that we could catch for after. So if to verify that is what happened there, I go in here, members. Yes, Adele is already there. So that is another error that we would have to fix because it also actually doesn't matter because they're already in there. That is fine. So yeah, anyway, if I get rid of that. If I go back here though, if I go over the next one, this is where this is where I originally wanted to get the error. So now this UPN does not exist in my organization, and that means it's going to go to the catch. Now it's going to put out that this person email does not exist. Now, if I go to my email, I'll bring the email over on my other screen here in a second once it opens. So it's just opening. So there we go. So the user's there. Let's see. Yes, that is correct. I actually realized I added a del. Oh, that's weird. Anyway, so there we go. So now I'm getting an email where Adele has been added and this one has not. Again, I can set it up so I don't want to take too much time here, but I actually have, let me see. So what you can do, if anyone's interested, let's say if I did not have any emails in the valid emails, in that email, it would show up as, it would just be like the following users have been added to the group, and then it would show nothing. If that's something that you wouldn't mind, that's fine too. But if you did not want that and you want to have a very clean email, what I would do is I would actually add a condition, and I would put basically just check to see if it's empty or not. I don't know how I'm doing for time.
It is. Yes. No, it's 6:36. So just to give you a line central. So just to give you an idea where you're at.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Sounds good. So what I'll do is I'll actually implement the one part and then I'll finish it off here. So again, I want to make it look like I have a nice clean email. So what I'm going to do is I am going to I'm going to scare a lot of people. I'm going to use a couple expressions. So again, for some reason, it's a weird thing that's happening where I can't actually reference the variable itself in here. When I did this before, I was able to reference it. Very strange. So I wasn't able to reference it, and the way I got around that, everybody, was I put it in the compose, and that is allows me to pull it in anyway. So don't know why it did that. So anyway, it's going to look kind of a little bit messy because now I'm going to have an extra compose for each one. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to have another compose for each one. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to check the length of the array for each one. So I'm going to check the length of the valid emails. I'm going to check the length for the invalid emails. So I'll just rename this quick to check. I'll just name it length of valid. And then I'll just add another one. Compose length of invalid. Oh, so now here's where the scary part comes in. So I'm going to use an expression again. It's not a very crazy expression. It's very simple. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do length. Big surprise. Length is very simple. We just pass in an array or a string, and it basically tells us the length. It'll tell us the length of the string, or it'll tell, if we pass in an array, it'll tell us the length of the array. So in this case, it's an array. So when I pass in, oh, it's allowing me to pass it in here. That's funny. So when I pass in the array itself of valid emails, then I'm going to hit OK. Now I have that length variable is valid emails. Very simple. Same thing here. I'm going to use another expression, name it length again, and then invalid emails. Now I'm going to get the length of both. So now I'm going to have to put a condition now. So condition. Now I'm going to have to actually have two conditions, and to make performance very key here, I'll do a parallel, same way I did it before, up top. So I'm going to have two conditions. My first condition here is going to be, I'll name it if any valid emails. I will just copy that name, and I will go over to this one and basically do it again, except invalid. Now, so here again, I'm going to actually fix this and actually put the add dynamic content and put in the responder's email. So that way whoever's responding to that email or responding to that form is going to get this email. And so now I don't need to have this part in here.
So Josh, I have a question here.
Yes.
For you, Dilip. So here you have mentioned outputs as 2 times, right? How it differentiate the valid email and invalid email? I didn't get that actually.
Yeah, so you can even hover over it and it'll tell you. So now this is important. This is why you give really good names. And I see people using a lot of names where they just put compose 1, compose 2, compose 3. If you put names, it's going to help you a lot. I know from a perspective looking at it like this, very confusing. But when you're doing, if you give it a valid name, when you're highlighting over it, or even when you're selecting it. So if I go in here, and I can see, yeah, it looks kind of messy because outputs. But if you read the name, compose split emails, that's my split email action. Compose length of invalid, length of valid. Here's my invalid emails, and then here's my valid emails. So that's how you can differentiate there.
Okay, got it. Okay. Yeah, as you said, right, I got confused on seeing that outputs. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I know. I wish the name would show up as the name that you define there. It's definitely one good thing about using variables, but variables, you have to know the data type that you're passing in. That's one thing that I don't like about it, but yeah. So going off there, so I'm gonna change the action name to this one to send an email valid, and then I'm gonna, hopefully this works. I will copy. And I'll put if true. I will add the, there we go. I'll change this to invalid, and I'll go over what I'm doing here in a second. Invalid. Okay, so now I got to add this into the true. Okay, so now here's where I'm going to build out the condition. So again, after it grabs the length of each array here, I'm grabbing the length. Now, if the array, so this is, I'm going to build it here. So if this length of the array, so I'll do, this is the valid one. So if I type, and the good way to look up things even with outputs is you can just type in outputs and it shows you all your output ones. So length of invalid, nope. Length of valid, yep. So length of valid emails is equal to, we don't want that. We actually want is greater than 0. So if it's greater than 0, there's valid emails. So we're going to do the exact same thing over here. So we're going to do, again, I'll just type in outputs here. Length of invalid emails is greater than 0. So now when I hit save, I'm actually going to have to change the email action in here. So right now it's kind of saying following users have been added. So I'm going to change that to the following users have not been added to the group. Please verify email addresses. Get rid of that one, and then I'll put the semicolon there. So now I'm going to put not the length. I actually want to put the real length of valid, length of compose valid, compose invalid emails. That's all the invalid ones. I'll change the subject line to users not added. Now I'm going to save this. There we go. So now I'm going to actually go back here. I'm going to remove these 2 people from this group. So now there's only me in there. Now if I go back here, I will copy this email submit a response. So I'll copy that one. Semicolon. I will copy this one. And then I will do a on user at gmail.com. So I'm going to submit that. Cross your fingers again. Don't want anything to break. So if I go back here, ran 8 seconds ago. So fast. So it says it's successful. That's because it went through the finally and went success. Now again, if I wanted this to fail, I'd put that terminate action in here. But again, I always want it to be successful because nothing technically broke. It's I'm able to send this off to the business users and they can actually check out to see what happens. So in here, the email, Megan has been added. Looks like they found him there. Megan's now added to the group, gets appended to that valid email list. The next one, I don't know why that keeps happening. It says this person's already added. Already exists in the following. Oh, I think I know what's happening. I think I have another flow that's adding them into that group. That's exactly what's happening. That's funny. So I have another flow apparently attached to this, adding them to that group every time I submit that form. So that's not an error that would technically happen. Yeah, so I have multiple flows that are attached to that form apparently. Because that's what's happening there. So just ignore that, because again, it's trying to add them even though the other flow already added them. And then the one that, the real important thing one is the one that doesn't exist, does not go over there because they cannot be found and they get put into here. So now if I check my email again, not that, I gotta go check it over here. I'll bring it over. So this is the valid ones. The users are added. And then I got a separate email here for the ones that are not valid. So there we go. Unknown user has not been added to the group. Now, again, this saved me a lot of time when I was having to add all these users into the group and giving access to the stakeholders to actually add their own members to their app made them very happy. And it also made them very happy they didn't have to wait on me to go in and add them into the group and then confirm with them saying, they're added in there. Literally, I gave them full control into adding them to the group. So that does conclude my demos. I do have a couple more slides. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. So the third email, which was already been added, right? So you didn't get notification either in the added group or not added group, right?
Right. Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Again, that is so. Again, that is from having a separate flow that's already triggered off into adding them. Again, what we could do actually, because technically they already are in that group, and that is why we're getting that error. We can actually move the valid emails above the add member to group, and then, in my opinion, this is the only reason why this action would fail. If this action is successful, this action should be successful. There's no other reason why it would fail, in my opinion. But again, this is why you do a lot of UAT testing and stuff like that, because you don't want to assume things. So there is an expression, I believe it's called actions. So I will not be able to show it here because it's very confusing. But I have done it before, and it is going to be something that I want to speak about. It's just that Power Automate does not make it easy to do that. But yes, you can actually extract the error or extract the actual, you can extract this, and then, yeah, you can check to see if something's happened. So, sorry, you'd want to, if I go back to the previous one here, you'd be able to extract, yes, so you'd be able to extract the outputs of this action, yeah. So you'd be able to extract it, and you can say, oh, if you see these words here, already exists, then, do something. Yeah, totally possible. Yeah, so it's just, you just have to have a lot of actions to do it, right? You're going to have a compose to use that action's expression. And then, yeah, but
It, if I don't want if I don't want my flow to say that it failed, I'll change it to it succeeded. But then there's also the other option, and I think it
canceled and
yeah, and
fail and succeed. Yeah.
and there's codes or something with them.
Oh, I see what you're
and
saying.
what to
Yes.
put in there. I just usually end up leaving it blank and just saying,
Yeah.
okay, I'm just going to make this succeeded, even though it technically didn't work. But now that I kind of see how to do this, I could get it to work. But that's always confusing to me.
Yeah. So the code, I've seen this a lot. And I even even with the conversation we were just having before, with kind of extracting that error information, you're actually, because of that terminate action, terminating process completely, you're not able to basically use this code anywhere else in your flow, because if terminate, no matter what it is, if it's successful, if it's canceled, as soon as it executes this action, it stops. So that's one thing that I don't understand about it either, is that if I put a code in here, there's really nothing I can do with it. Now, I guess the only good thing about that is maybe if I have my own like coding schema defined in the background, and I give this flow to like the support team, and I'm like, here's a status code to look out for, but they would only be able to see that if they go into the flow run, which yeah, it's not very intuitive that way. It's a great point. I wish that you
Yeah, because I was looking online at one point in time, it was a long time ago, but I'm like, is there like a list of error codes that exists out there that we're supposed to be using? And I couldn't find anything, so I just let it go.
You basically have to make your own library of codes, and then, as they say, document it and then hand it off to the support folks and says, hey, here's your little guide to my errors. And it's going to be custom for everybody. That's the only issue.
Well, and it would have to look it up from somewhere. I mean, if I just say 1, 2, 3, 4 is that error code, where is that error code? Where does that list exist? Or
Yes. Maybe in a SharePoint list to remain free, or maybe in Dataverse on Teams where it might be free. Just saying.
Okay. Thank you.
There's a good use for CDS, for Dataverse, I should say, Dataflex, Dataverse. That would be a good actually use for a common data situation, a set of common error codes to the organization. Just a thought.
No, that's great. Yeah. So I'm not plugging this by any means, but where I work, we actually use this thing called Serverless 360, and it's this third-party tool, and we use it to monitor our logic apps. That's almost the same thing as Flow, but and I haven't tried this, but now you got me thinking, because you're able to monitor, like we have monitoring set up for logic apps, where if a logic app fails, you get an alert right away. But you're also able to check the reason of the failure. Now, I'm not actually sure, but if I put a code and a message in here, I wonder if like when this fails, I wonder if that gets pushed out. Because if it does, you might be able to use the third-party tool to do something. But again, I don't want to plug that tool or anything, but I really wish, again, that this could be used very.
For those folks who are developers out there, it's the 12-factor mantra, we call it, wherein you don't really write an error log or anything. You basically send your errors to the ether. They call it this. You stream them. You send them out. They call it standard in, standard out in programming language. And the concept of that is like whatever error system or logging system or watching monitor system is connected to your system. As long as you do something standard, it will see it. If you don't, because then you're basically locking yourself in. And if you're right, that's exactly what that's exactly what it should do. Because it should just throw it out, right? Just an error. I'm just sending this information out. And if they did it like a logic app or like basically Azure Function, just a thought. You may want to test it.
Yeah, I definitely want to test it.
And do report back if it does work, because that's actually very revealing. Because if it does that, some developers who claim that this can't do certain things will have to come back and revisit feasibility.
Yeah, that's definitely something I want to try now.
Indeed. All these ideas. Let's see. I have a note from Sandro. I don't know if this code is passed back or if there is a request response flow. That's a good thought.
Sandro, you made it in. It's pretty late where you are.
Sandro is enjoying a port in my honor in Portugal. A port in Portugal is the best place to have a port.
All right. So again, we will have time for more questions if needed, but so the key takeaways, don't know why that's happening there, it's glitched out. So yeah, so the configure run after property on the scopes, catch should run if try has failed, skipped, or timed out. Finally should run if catch is successful, failed, skipped, timed out. Excuse me. And then terminate versus forcing an error. Again, we were just kind of talking about the terminate action there. Use terminate when you want the flow to stop everything completely. And then use my method or a method that maybe you guys create yourself to throw errors or force errors to keep the flow from processing and not stop immediately. And that being said, that is the end of my session. Again, you can connect with me on any of these platforms. I will accept it. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to me directly. Yeah, thank you all for having me. And I appreciate everyone listening and taking the time to interact so much with my demos.
Wow. Applause sound effect right here. Hold on a second. I'm going to insert that into the video later. Since I can't teach it. Yes, there we go. I heard it. Click, click, click. Okay. So we have one opportunity over here for the folks that are here. If you want to say have your autograph picture taken with Josh, this is your chance to turn on your video. We'll do one more together mode selfie. And I got my together mode on. This is our chance for a together mode selfie. You can come over here, and then Josh can take a look and over here and see who's not with this protection that showed up. You don't have to show yourselves. You can always show your avatar if you got one of those. So let's give it a few moments over here. I'm waving right now. I'm going to take a picture. All right. Go ahead. You can also do Shift Windows S to capture your own picture of the picture right there. And I've got it. There we go. There we go. Thank you. We will share this with our friendly friends as we go along. That's it. Any other questions? This is like a ask me portion. If there's questions, like I posted earlier that I did the licensing doc for docs@microsoft.com. So just as a note over here, I'm very impressed that this demo did not use one premium connector. It's like, my favorite is like when they go through, it's like, will that cost us a licensing? And it's like, and everyone have to go through all this rigmarole explanation. I have not seen one premium connector used. Well done, sir. Woo. That was amazing. Not even one.
I didn't even think of
almost
that.
Did.
Good.
You almost did, right? You was like, well, maybe the data can be kept somewhere. Shh, don't do it.
Hey, I'd keep it somewhere free. Don't worry.
Yes, you did. You did. That was so excellent. And that was one. So there's, I can take a answer on that if anyone has one. But again, you can always chat me also in the meetup, and I can also answer those questions there or on Twitter, wherever we are. And of course, Josh, you got his information, and we're going to share this information again too. Please follow up and please play with the stuff, because the more people play, the more people find things that need to be fixed, and the better it gets. We got a question on premium connectors.
Yeah, just
please.
Is the send the HTTPS to SharePoint or isn't there a premium connector like
HTTP request when you're talking to like APIs and stuff? That is a premium connector.
Yeah.
Sadly.
And so you need what license do you need?
So if you're doing Flow, you either have your per user license or you have one of those like Flow bundles that the corporation would buy. The so-called you get 5 and everybody can use them. It's going to be one of those. Okay. Assuming you're not doing it from a Power App. Let's say you're doing it from a Power App and you're already paying the license from the Power App. You don't have to pay for the flow.
Oh, okay.
That's the part that people get confused. They think that from a Power App, if they're doing that, they got to pay for both the Power App and the flow. No, you only have to pay for one.
Yeah.
So you pay for the Power App first, of course, because that's got its own thing. If you just do flow by itself, then you'd pay for the flow.
Okay. Yeah, and then it would generally just be if you had the flow author, the flow creator. It's not the people, like if, say in this instance, he was...
So there's the rule, right? If you build a Power App, you're the person that pays the license. The flow, however, is when it's created, right? So it's a creation versus a build sort of thing, not when it actually runs. So this is the case. The flows can run unlimited times, umpteen millions of times. And if it's running from your instance and it's yours and it's running for that, not a problem. If you attach a flow, it's really how it's triggered. If it's triggered, for example, from something in the background, like completely unattended and everything else, then it's going to need that kind of license.
Okay.
So,
if you're using the SharePoint one though, if you're using that SharePoint connector, that's included with the free one.
yes.
Yeah.
So wherever possible, try to see. The problem is some APIs, unfortunately, are even when you're talking to SharePoint, go unfortunately behind the scenes to Graph API. Unfortunately, Graph API is still a REST API, and you still have to pay. So you got to sometimes think about it like, oh well, hold on a second, isn't there an actual connector that does exactly this? Try to locate those first, especially like if you're doing something like add to a list. You can do it from the REST, but why not just do the one that's free and not the one that might be fast?
Yeah. I may have to revisit, and I'm not using it right now, but we did one where it was using the approval action. So like starting it for an approval, and they time out after the 30 days or what have you. So then I was doing kind of like a parent-child flow type thing and was calling using HTTP request in there, but we're not actually using that and maybe that wasn't.
That's right. Once that's in the flow somewhere, then it's going to ask for it. That being said, the good thing is though, you don't have to pay for it twice. So if you had a flow calling another one or something else, once you pay for that license, it's done. So you can just do it as many times as you want. You don't need an additional license for each and every single thing.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
We have a question from Sandra. What about your experience about sharing flows across the team? Are you guys using service accounts to connect to the service or the personal accounts? This is a good question. Josh, what do you do over here? Do you use your account or personal accounts?
Yeah. So I guess it is kind of a confusing thing, but in a dev environment, I would want to use my own connections just because I can see, especially if it's sending an email. Now I would suggest using service accounts for as many actions as possible. Like sending an email. In that case, I wouldn't want to send it from my account. I might want to have an account named like flow@flowaltdelete.ca. Use that account.
No reply at account that. Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, something like that. Now I wish that you can use a service principal for everything, but you can't. That would be awesome.
Yes. So you can't. We know that. So I also use service accounts, especially in those particular cases when I'm doing development. Also, will be my own account for it. But a service account is a valid account as far as licensing goes. It's an account. It's an account. Just so happens that no one owns it. Again, because of the way the context of how the flow runs. Not the same with Power Apps, but with Flow, absolutely.
Kind of tagging onto that. So let's say, because we didn't use a service account for most of our flows, and we've had things kind of go a little sprawly, if you will, but we're trying to kind of reel things in and actually get into a process of using the service account. But we may not technically want users knowing like that service account's password. Well, I know you have to know it at first just to get into Office.
Right.
Do you have any thoughts on how to kind of set that up, or just from a security standpoint, it could be bad if we were like, hey, here's a service account, here's this password, and then somebody goes rogue and does something they shouldn't.
That's a tough one. It's like when it gets to that level, then we were like, okay, then you're going to need to run more like an RPA or like on the outside.
Okay.
And actually, that in itself costs more.
Yeah.
The so-called RPA option.
Yep.
Right? If you're going to have it like automated in the back end, and you might use, say, like Azure Key Vault or one of those fun things to use for that. Yeah, you're outside of the realm, as they say.
Yeah.
The thought when you're sharing and you're doing it in a shared environment, yes. Then they have the case of like, it's either everyone's going to share and everyone's nice. I'm using that account. We know what's going on. But you can't trace it, right? If you set up something for a shared account and it runs, you don't know who did it. Because if all these people had the license, you don't know who actually initiated. Yeah, with the logic caps, it can be nasty. This is true. With Azure functions, again, you can, a lot of those when you're building those, it's just discipline to set up the governance for all that stuff. We just had to do exactly that kind of project with that kind of piece, and the just to make that stuff work, especially with all the recent changes to authentication, was a bit of a pain. But once it's done, then you sit back and rest on your laurels.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Certainly. All right. Oop. Just trying to see what else is going on over here. Let's see other questions that may be out there. We're at the top of our normal hour over here. If there are no other questions, we'll turn this recording as quickly around as possible. It may not be the exact full presentation as we saw. Like I had some stuff in the beginning and everything else. Some of it might be a little chopped up and everything else, but I'll make sure that the entire Josh's entire presentation is secure and complete. So at the very least, we're going to get that.
Where's the best place to put the PowerPoint? Did you want me to send it to you so people can download it, or?
So if you want to put it in some place like a slide share or something like that, and just share the link, that might be the quickest way. But otherwise, if you just want to send a file, just send it to us and we'll post it.
Okay. And
we'll post it with the link to the video when that's ready as well. Thank you all for coming. We had a nice way to end the year, and I'm glad that everyone's here and everyone's safe. And we look forward to the next meeting. And Josh, good luck with your Scots friends.
Thank you.
Yes. Have a scotch for me with the Scots. Thank you. We were talking about drinks the whole time. We had ports for Portugal and scotch for Scotland. Perfect. Love it. All right, folks. Thank you so much. We're going to say bye-bye. Take care.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Happy holidays.